home decorations, electronics, and clothes. It may look like a nicer thrift store, but every item is free to those in need, said Pastor Tom Barber, People City's mission CEO. What people don't realize is that that stuff is just as important as food. You need diapers and all this other stuff, he said. We've created a Bed Bath & Beyond with all free stuff in there. Those who qualify for the Help Center can receive food, 25 clothing items, and 50 household items per shopping session. The Help Center transformed from a thrift store in 2007 and helps about 22,000 people yearly, Barber said. It's made possible by the 4 to 5 million pounds of donations the organization receives every year. The high volume means the Help Center's shelves stay full of useful items, and the items that aren't taken are sold to distributors and reach people in Central and South America, Canada, and Africa. Going to another page. The back of the Help Center is just as busy as the front. Christian music plays from a radio as people sort donations from toss boxes, which are located in 9 spots throughout Lincoln. Volunteer coordinator Casey Thompson said volunteers are constantly sorting donations. We have people spend their whole shift here, she said. We use volunteers like crazy. Without volunteers, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. However, the presence of trash and unusable donations puts extra strain on the organization, she said. You never know what you're going to find. Adult novelties, used pads, dirty diapers, Thompson said. When people bring all the trash, it makes it hard to sort everything. Barber said about 10% of donations coming in are waste, which costs the organization $7,000 per month to dispose. While the toss boxes have been around for 5 years, they're accumulating more trash lately, and Barber isn't sure why. What they're doing is throwing furniture down trash, just dropping bags of clothes outside, even when the box isn't full, he said. It's looking junky. The junk includes broken furniture, worn out tires, old television sets, and 1 underwater flare gun, according to driver Dan Keller. It's caused 2 locations to remove the boxes from their parking lots. The Sam's Club and Super Saver and other location managers have voiced concerns. We have others saying, we're nervous, and that's because they're junking it all out, he said. It's making it hard for people to want to help us. Barber said the removal of toss boxes wouldn't stop donations, since people can bring donations to the Help Center, but it would drastically reduce the volume. His goal is to reduce waste to a more manageable 5%, and he's trying to raise awareness about the boxes to keep them in Lincoln. But it's tricky to manage a system based on anonymous donations. You can't force it. You can't force people to be nice, he said. You can't monitor it. There's no way, even if you can reduce it. Barber hopes to see the program continue and spread across the country. There are currently 13 Tossbox partners in churches outside of Lincoln, and a partner in Waverly made $5,000 in its first year. He wants the idea to continue growing. I think other nonprofits want to help others the way we do, he said. We can show them how to make more money doing that. I want to get these going all over the country and start a mini revolution.
Riverfront plans include saving as many trees as possible. As many healthy trees as possible will be saved when the transformation of Jean Leahy Mall and the riverfront begins next year. The $290 million project will create a 90-acre park along the mall and river from the marina near the Bob Carey pedestrian bridge south to the Breakers apartment complex at Leavenworth Street. The Riverfront Revitalization Committee has brought in Davie Resource Group to do a tree inventory to determine which trees in Heartland Park of America, Lewis and Clark Landing, and along the river and in the mall are in good enough shape to keep or transplant into areas of the new park. Each species will be identified along with every tree's diameter, its condition, its canopy spread, and its height and location. Our goal is not to go through and clear cut anything, Omaha Parks Director Brooke Bench said. We want mature trees in the new project. We don't want every tree to be 6 feet tall. Native species that have proved they can withstand the rigors of city living will be given priority. Doug Bisson of HDR, a member of the working committee for the for the Riverfront Revitalization Group, said he's excited about the effort to save as many trees as possible. Long term, we're going to have a much healthier canopy, Bisson said. We're really going to get the right things in. Some trees will be spaded out and moved to a holding area until their final home in the project is determined. Others will stay in place. Fencing will surround healthy trees to keep people, machinery, and material from compacting the soil, which can injure the roots, City Forester John Wynn said. A row of failing sycamores that stretch along the Douglas Street sidewalk from 10th to 13th Street won't be among the trees transplanted. They are on the decline and not worth saving. Many of the trees in that stretch have already died and been replaced with flower beds. Many of the trees that have sprung up along the river also are showing signs of decline from the 2011 flood that won't be saved. Tree diversity will be a goal for the new project. Native species such as oaks, black maples, and locust trees will be among the trees planted. Living in a downtown area can cut a tree's life expectancy in half, Bench said. Heat radiating from concrete and parked cars and damage from the salt put on snowy streets in the winter can stress downtown trees. In the past, trees typically were planted 4 to 6 foot circular concrete planters that eventually restricted root growth. Trees planted now have a minimum of 100 square feet of room, with a 36-inch minimum of high-quality root space. A lot of them will be planted in a new design that will make it easier for them to grow, Bench said. It will be more of an open design, a lot more turf, and a more tree-friendly environment than currently exists.
State to implement good behavior game in schools. Some Nebraska schools may have students play a game next year that officials say help disruptive students behave and can potentially prevent violence, drug abuse, and suicide. The Nebraska Board of Education has approved spending $2.5 million of U.S. Justice Department grant money to implement the good behavior game in 30 schools. Supporters of the game have said it's proven to improve the classroom environment, but many are skeptical, calling it wishful thinking. The good behavior game requires teachers to divide students into competing teams. The best behaving team will be rewarded with prizes and privileges. Teams will be penalized for violating class rules. The good behavior game has a long research and evidence base behind it that affects violent behavior, said Jolene Palmer, the State Department of Education's school security director. It also decreases suicide, it increases school attendance, and a plethora of other outcomes. Palmer said the state piloted the game at 3 elementary schools 5 years ago. Students were more focused on tasks and more tolerant of others, she said. The game may work for some students, but the ones that don't respect authority aren't easily converted, said Max Eden, a fellow with the Manhattan Institute. Lisa Fricke, a retired teacher who serves on the state board, said the game teaches basic good behavior, particularly for students who aren't receiving those lessons at home. As a public school, we need to fill in those voids that aren't available to at-risk kids, she said. The state is partnering with the RAND Corporation to implement the game and sustain it on a large scale. Officials will recruit schools to introduce the game next year.
A proposed indoor-outdoor club and amphitheater for La Vista is poised to take a step forward. The City Council on Tuesday will consider offering infrastructure support for the music venue, which would be part of the $235 million City Center and Civic Park redevelopment under construction on 84th Street. The roughly $3.2 million in public improvements, for the most part, are needed for the area's park even without the venue, said La Vista Mayor Doug Kindig and City Administrator Brenda Gunn. Should the project move forward, Omaha-based 1% Productions and Kansas-based Mammoth Incorporated, along with Omaha developer City Ventures, would build, own, and operate the entire venue as a result of negotiations with the city. Originally, the firms had proposed to own and operate the club and have the city handle the amphitheater portion. More details will be available this week. Meanwhile, the long-awaited redevelopment between Parkview Boulevard and Giles Road is starting to take shape. A First National Bank branch opened its doors in a new building last week. It's the city center's first tenant and one of 4 businesses that are already in the development area and are sticking around. Rocket Car Wash and McDonald's were both remodeled, and Chili's will move to a new building within the development. The 30-acre private portion of the development is progressing nicely, said Chris Erickson, a developer with City Ventures. Construction is on schedule and on budget, he said Friday. The names of new tenants will be announced soon. We certainly have exciting things in the works, he said. City Center plans calls for restaurants, apartments, bars, offices, and retail, all overlooking a sprawling park and lake replacing the La Vista Falls golf course. New businesses should begin opening along a city center's main street as early as next spring, Erickson said. The world of retail is certainly changing nationally and in Omaha, but we have been experiencing strong interest because of how underserved Sarpy County is for the type of experience we're creating, Erickson said. Today, a large building is visible going up on the north end of the project. When completed, the building will feature apartments and commercial space. Another multi-use building with residential space lofted over commercial will go up in the future, he said. La Vista's leaders also want to give 84th Street itself a makeover. They recently completed design work for the Corridor for 84th Streetscape project, which seeks to add archways, pedestrian bridges and underpass, wider sidewalks, and more lighting and more trees along the highway. As part of that streetscape effort, the city recently went to the State Department of Transportation with a request for the local control of 84th Street. Sorry.
Proposed Nebraska college faces obstacles. Officials proposing a Christian university in eastern Nebraska face financial and administrative challenges before opening the school on a defunct college campus. Cheris University President Marv Overman aims to open the school in Blair by August. The university first needs a few $100,000 in the coming weeks to open at the former Dana College campus, in addition to $1 million to cover the first year. Overman must submit an application to the Nebraska Coordinating Commission for Post-Secondary Education within the next few days, said Kathleen Pimple, the commission's academic programs officer. The commission will consider the proposed new institution's intent, programming, expected enrollment, and any evidence that Cheris University can be sustained in the long term. Commissioners will also look into the university's facilities. Overman still needs to negotiate a lease agreement with the current owner of the Dana property. Dana College closed in 2010. Cheris University will offer programs including Christian ministry, fine arts, and teacher education. The school will provide apprenticeships, life transitions help, online courses, 2-year programs, 4-year programs, and graduate work. The university plans to utilize some students as staff to keep costs down. A culinary training program would run the campus dining facility. Greg Keene, a member of Cheris's advisory board, said he believes there's a market for a university of spiritual training, mentoring, and trades. I'm convinced there's still a niche for that, he said. Overman said his faith will help him overcome the financial obstacles and secure the university's approval.
An agency tasked with bringing sewer service to the southern half of Sarpy County has been busy since it began meeting last November. The Sarpy County and Sarpy City's wastewater agency hired legal counsel, selected a financial institution, formed a draft of its roughly $367,000 budget, and hired planning and engineering consultants. The county is providing all of the funds to start. We're off and running and things are going well, said Sarpy County Board Chairman Don Kelly, who serves on the agency. The goal is to have pipe in the ground in 2019, he said. A ridge line cutting roughly east and west across the county leaves the portion of the south without sewer service, which makes it difficult to develop. Leaders from the county, Bellevue, Gretna, La Vista, Papillion, and Springfield, joined forces in September 2017 to tackle the issue. The chairman of the county board and mayors of each city sit on the agency board, but mayors can also designate administrators to do work in their stead. There are $220 million worth of sewers needed to service the entire area. Next on the agency's to-do list, hire a financial advisor and get planning. A key and potential challenging next step is determining the first areas that will get sewer access. Those consequently will be the first areas opened up for development. Obviously, we're not going to and can't spend $220 million in the next year or 2 or 3, said Dan Hoynes, Sarpy County's administrator. So it has to be phased. The cities all have plans adopted that say how their community should grow, Hoynes said. So we've had to work cooperatively with them to create consistency. The effort also comes at a contentious time for some. Gretna and the county are in the midst of a legal dispute over a proposed annexation. And Gretna and Papillion are in talks to settle the disagreement over who has claim to a future Interstate 80 interchange planned for 192nd Street. The agency invited developers, engineers, and lawyers, individuals who work in development in Sarpy, to provide input. Kelly said he hopes to have a plan in place in 2 or 3 months. The agency's next meeting is June 26th.
Okay, it's time for today's obituary announcements. I'm reading the obituaries from the Lincoln Journal-Star. Raymondson, Delilah Raymondson, 87, of Lincoln. A service to celebrate Delilah's life will be held at 1 p.m. on Tuesday, June 19th at St. Mark's United Methodist Church in Lincoln. Roper and Sons in charge of the arrangements. Horner, Rosemary L. Horner, 87, of Lincoln. A celebration of life will be held at 3 p.m. June 21st at St. Mark's United Methodist Church at 8550 Pioneers Boulevard in Lincoln. Klon, Carl Francis Klon, aged 98, of Lincoln. Funeral service will be held at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, June 20th at Calvary Lutheran Church at 2788 Franklin Street in Lincoln. Memorials are suggested to Calvary Lutheran Church, and Boothera's Macer and Love Funeral Home is handling the arrangements. LeKay, Catherine Kitty LeKay, 93, of Lincoln. Funeral services will be held at 10 a.m. on Tuesday at Emmanuel Lutheran Church, 2001 South 11th Street. Memorials are to go to the family for later designation, and Boothera's Macer and Love Funeral Home is handling the arrangements. Wacker, Daniel J. Wacker, age 85, of Lincoln, a veteran. The funeral service will be held at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, June 19th at Boothera's Macer and Love Funeral Home at 4040 A Street in Lincoln. Burial with military honors will be at the Wyuka Cemetery. Memorials are suggested to Child Advocacy Center, CAC, or Lincoln Parks Foundation for Pioneer Park tree restoration. And finally, Bellolavi, Roger Jean Bellolavi, funeral arrangements are pending for Thursday at Kunsel Funeral Home in Crete.
And in the Omaha World Herald, Andrews, Mary Bordowski Andrews, 89. A private family graveside service will be at Evergreen Memorial, and memorials to a charity of your choice. There is no mortuary listed. Bates, Welland Doc Bates, a veteran, 90. The John A. Gentleman Mortuary and Crematory in charge. Burns, Jeannie M. Tucker Burns, 85. Memorials to St. Wenceslas Church. The John A. Gentleman Mortuary and Crematory, Pacific Street Chapel, in charge. Caldwell, John J. Caldwell, Jr., 81, a veteran. Memorials to the St. Thomas More Endowment Fund and the West Center Chapel of Hefe Hoffman Dvorak Cutler in charge. Campbell, Katie A. Campbell, 30. A complete notice will come later from the West Center Chapel of Hefe Hoffman Dvorak Cutler. Ellis, John Warren Jack Ellis, a veteran, 87. Memorials to the Nebraska Humane Society and the Lutheran Church of the Master in Omaha, Nebraska. There is no mortuary listed. Gerlach, Richard F. Gerlach, 69. The visitation is Wednesday from 6 to 8. The service Thursday at 10:30 a.m. St. Martha's Episcopal Church in Papillion. The Kaler Doltz Mortuary in Papillion in charge. Grau, Betty A. Grau, 88. The family internment was on June 16th, 2018. There is no mortuary listed. Hartzell, Herschel D. Hartzell, 98. A complete notice will come later from the West Center Chapel of Hefe Hoffman Dvorak Cutler. Herring, Donald J. Herring, Jr., 56. Memorials will be directed by the family, and the Bellevue Memorial Chapel of Hefe Hoffman Dvorak Cutler in charge. Hines, Leona E. Hines, 88. The celebration of Leona's life will be Thursday, June 1st, 10:30 at the Gretna Community Church in Gretna, Nebraska. Memorials should go to the Gretna Community Church. The Bremen Mortuary Southwest Chapel in charge. Hood, Patrick Donald Joseph Hood, 76, of Pocahontas, Iowa. The West Center Chapel of Hefe Hoffman Dvorak Cutler in charge. Kronberg, Joyce A. Kronberg, 85. The services are Saturday, June 23rd at 10 a.m. at Messiah Lutheran Church in Ralston. The West Center Chapel of Hefe Hoffman Dvorak Cutler in charge. Lemur, Taruko I. Lemur, 89. The memorial service is Wednesday, June 19th at 10 a.m. The family will direct memorials. And the John A. Gentleman Mortuary and Crematory in Bellevue in charge. Nagy, Daniel S. Nagy, 34. The visitation is June 19th from 6 to 8 p.m. Memorials will be directed by the family. The West Center Chapel of Hefe Hoffman Dvorak Cutler in charge. Paget, Alice Paget, 94. A complete notice will come later from the Corisko Larkin Staskowitz Funeral Home. Peters, Neil Owen Peters, 75. A celebration of Neil's life will be Tuesday, June 19th at 6:30, and visitation 1 hour prior. The Bremen Mortuary Southwest Chapel in charge. Rice, Margaret J. Rice, 89. Visitation is Thursday, June 21st, 10 to 11 a.m. at the West Center Chapel. A complete notice will come later from the West Center Chapel of Hefe Hoffman Dvorak Cutler. Schiller, Ruth and Robert Schiller, 82 and 89. They will be laid to rest together next to Ruth's sister Edith and her husband Leonard Rodowski in Forest Lawn Cemetery this September, and there is no mortuary listed. Scribler, Donald P. Scribler, 83, a veteran. Memorials to the Open Door Mission or the Disabled American Veterans. The Corisko Larkin Staskowitz Funeral Home in charge. Smith, Joyce T. Smith, 83. Services will be announced later in Bowie, Texas. Sutton, Sister Mary Janine Sutton, 94. Memorials to the Sisters of Mercy. the John A. Gentleman Mortuary and Crematory, 72nd Street Chapel in charge. Cesard, Leo A. Cesard, 85, a veteran. The Carisco Larkin Staskowitz Funeral Home in charge. Teft, Patrick J. Teft, 43. Memorials will be directed by the family. The John A. Gentleman Mortuary and Crematory in charge. Vitland, Sister Mary Anna Vitland, 81. A complete notice could come later from the West Center Chapel of Hebe Hoffman Dvorak Cutler. Weiner, John Lee Weiner, 86, a veteran. Memorials to Nebraska Humane Society or the Boy Scouts of America. The West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home in charge. Wymore, Kenneth Wymore, 71. The John A. Gentleman Mortuary and Crematory in charge.
Listeners' memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible and will go a long way in keeping Radio Talking Book on the air. Please keep Radio Talking Book in mind when memorials are listed as donor's choice or your favorite charity. Donations should be sent to Radio Talking Book Network, 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205, Omaha, Nebraska, 68152. And thank you for being a Radio Talking Book listener and supporter. We've reached the halfway point in our reading today. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with, what are we going to be back with? Editorials, today's living and entertainment, and sports.
We read this.
Thank you, Mike.
We read this at the very end.
We read it before sports.
We've been proudly serving our blind
Before the sports.
listeners for 43 years. Radio Talking Book is brought to you with the cooperation of KIOS FM in Omaha and statewide through the facilities
Before
of
sports,
NET
okay.
Radio.
Well, it says read it
Television.
at this time after business and markets.
Oh, yeah, I see. Of course.
We never have business and markets anymore
Well, it's
anyway.
11 o'clock, and what does that mean, folks? It means the senior lunch menus, courtesy of Jane Nielsen. Here she is.
Do I start first?
I do.
It is
You do.
Monday, June 18th.
You
And the meals on
do.
Bill's menu for today is meatloaf and gravy, whipped potatoes, green beans, rye bread with margarine, fruited gelatin, and 1% milk.
And as a reminder, you can hear the senior lunch menus every day, Monday through Friday, right here on Radio Talking Book. And now, before we return for the second hour
There's
of
sure
the
a lot more
newspapers, let's
extra
listen to
stuff
this
being
public service
out
announcement
there,
once again.
isn't there?
Here
Senior
is Jane
dinners?
Nielsen, along with Michael Holula.
You go.
That's it.
Oh,
Hi, this is Jane with some information about the
This is
Ski
the
for
break.
Light event.
Yeah.
Ski for Light takes place in Deadwood, South Dakota.
I was ready to go.
Third week in January. They offer blind and disabled.
In that case, I'll have a
guides
drink of water.
Downhill, cross-country ski, snowshoeing, and snowmobiling. They would like to invite the blind and disabled to attend a Ski for Light event this coming January. And if you would like more information.
Yeah, this
please
mixed me up.
contact Ward or Kathy Kinney at 402.
I remember thinking, are we done?
366-9596,
Let's get out of here.
Or visit the Ski for Light
I
webpage.
thought, but there's so much I haven't read yet.
www.bhsfl.org. That's B as in boy, H, S as in Sam, F as in Frank, L.
Water is
.org.
good.
The reading of the Omaha World Herald and Lincoln Journal Star are brought to you today by WellCare Health Plans, proudly focused on providing government-sponsored managed care services through Medicaid and Medicare prescription drug plans to families, children, and seniors in Nebraska. For more about WellCare, call today at 1-888-255-2605 or visit www.wellcare.com/Nebraska.
Thank you very much, Michael. And now let's return for the second hour of the live reading of the Lincoln Journal-Star and the Omaha World-Herald. Welcoming back to the microphones our lovely Monday morning stars. Hello, Mike Garrity and Laura Beth Barr.
It's lovely today, right? Okay, this is Mike Garrity back with the editorials. And as you know, I'm having problems with editorials in the Lincoln Journal-Star. So I am going to read Don Walton's political column that runs normally in the paper. And today, the headline for that is Trump, a focus of GOP meeting, the likely theme for Dems too. Nebraska Republicans capped off their full-throated support for President Trump over the weekend with approval of a resolution condemning Special Counsel Robert Mueller's ongoing investigation as an unjust attack on the president and his administration. The GOP state convention approved the resolution proposed by Bruce DeSantis of Hitchcock County in southwest Nebraska, despite a recommendation from the convention's resolutions committee that the proposal be shelved. Its enactment followed on the heels of a verbal package of strong support for the president and his record of conservative achievement, voiced by the state's leading elected Republican office holders. Nebraska Democrats take the stage next with their state convention scheduled this coming weekend in Lincoln. You can bet that Trump will be a focus of their attention too. And so we appear headed for a sharp pro-Trump, anti-Trump division that will center on party just as so much of our political life does today, with Congress serving as the overriding example of party divided, party organized, party first on both sides, not quite what the founders had in mind. Next, big seismic stuff keeps happening. Whether you agree with President Trump or not, he is rapidly disengaging the United States from its international leadership / partnership role and moving toward an America first or America only and alone posture. And that could set the stage for China to begin to emerge now and fill the dominant international role. On the broad stage of history, China appears to be the player that's ready and waiting on deck in baseball terms. Yeah, I get it. This is beyond my pay grade. What the heck do I know? Not much, but enough to be aware that history teaches that great powers emerge and enter into a finite lifespan before they either are defeated, recede, or withdraw. And we just might be approaching a pivotal moment now. Swift withdrawal of the United States from the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade agreement probably was a first step, ceding Asia to China instead of assuring and cementing long-term U.S. engagement, commitment, and influence in the region for decades to come. And the dominoes just keep falling in terms of U.S. withdrawal, dispute, or disengagement. The global climate change agreement, the international agreement to contain Iran's development of nuclear weapons, division within NATO, the fracturing of long-established deep relationships with Canada and European allies within the Group of Seven, ongoing threats to NAFTA and our closest neighbors, a sharp reduction in funding for international diplomacy conducted by the State Department. We may be living in a globally historic and pivotal moment if all this continues to grow. Finishing up, Senator Deb Fischer is a candidate for vice chair of the Senate GOP conference, a post that would move her up the Republican leadership ladder in Washington. Fischer already serves on Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's leadership team. Lincoln attorney Bob Evnen, the Republican nominee for Secretary of State, will join other state leaders in Washington this week to urge Nebraska lawmakers to adequately fund the State Department and the U.S. Agency for International Development in the wake of the Trump administration's proposal to cut funding by 30%. The onrushing ice melt in Antarctica is just the latest evidence of what lies ahead for young generations, because we not only won't act decisively on climate change, but are reversing course and abandoning virtually all environmental concerns now. Once there was the greatest generation, not much competition since. Still thinking restoration of a kids section at the stadium with seats bought and donated by businesses may be the best way to help build the future Husker fan base, while also assuring there'll always be a capacity crowd at Husker home games. Otherwise, kids are going to grow up conditioned to watching the Huskers on TV and may just continue doing that. Next, we all knew what a prize Scott Frost would be, but Bill Moose has also been the perfect fit. The Husker band should break away from its conventional confines of tradition and add a celebratory song this season. Next, scrap political posturing. Get those kids back in their parents' arms.
And the editorial in the Omaha World Herald, time is running out on a renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement. House Speaker Paul Ryan says there's little time left for Congress to receive a revamped agreement and meet all the timeline requirements under federal law. Meanwhile, Mexico holds its presidential election on July the 1st, and a leftist candidate unlikely to strike a quick NAFTA deal is expected to win. Plus, the Trump administration recently undermined the NAFTA talks by slapping hefty tariffs on steel and aluminum exports from Canada and Mexico, spurring the two countries to impose retaliatory tariffs on selected U.S. goods. Trump's tariff decision derails the spirit of the renegotiation of NAFTA, Jorge Guajardo, a former Mexican ambassador to the United States, said last week. Canada and Mexico both made clear to the administration, he said, that they would not negotiate with a gun pointed to their heads. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called the U.S. tariff decision totally unacceptable and announced tariffs on a variety of U.S. goods. Still, the NAFTA talks are continuing, with progress reportedly made on some of the stumbling blocks. Meanwhile, 32 U.S. senators, including the 4 senators in Nebraska and Iowa's congressional delegations, offered sound advice in a recent letter to the administration, urging it not to disrupt our trade relations with Canada and Mexico by withdrawing from NAFTA or insisting on unreasonable demands. In our view, a take-it-or-leave-it strategy could have negative unintended effects that jeopardize American jobs and economic growth, the lawmakers said in their May 21st letter to Robert Leitzinger, the U.S. trade representative. When discussing NAFTA modernization legislation with Congress, we ask the administration to employ a strategy that emphasizes collaboration rather than conflict. The letter urged the administration to work closely with members of Congress from both parties to ensure that any agreement has the broad support necessary to be enacted into law. Those are all important points. Nebraska agricultural producers have been looking with concern about our trade to Mexico, for example, amid the trade uncertainties between our two countries. Some Mexican officials have demanded that their country increase its ag-related imports from South America. To boost its trade options, the Mexican government concluded a free trade agreement in April with the European Union. To help maintain Nebraska's trade ties, Governor Pete Ricketts will lead a trade delegation to Mexico in August. Mexico is Nebraska's largest export market for corn, wheat, and dairy products, and the state's second largest export market for soybeans and soybean products, dry edible beans, sorghum, and distillers' grains. In 2016, Nebraska sold an estimated $996 million in agricultural products to Mexico. Unfortunately, the president's approach to trade is so impulsively, overly aggressive, and unpredictable that it undercuts our economic relationships with Canada and Mexico. But that just shows that the senators are right in their central message. Don't withdraw from NAFTA, and don't insist on impossible demands. It's advice the administration ought to heed for the sake of our economy.
Okay, and I'm borrowing from yesterday's World Herald for opinion material, and this is their editorial in yesterday's paper. And it's a headline, Some Keys to Effectiveness. In partisan politics, it's common to think of those in the other political party as the enemy, foes to be mocked, sometimes vilified and opposed at every turn. That kind of thinking is common in the world of social media and is on display nightly on bombastic cable TV chat shows. Once elected to the Nebraska legislature, though, a freshman state senator needs to move beyond thinking in terms of rigid enemy stereotypes if he or she has serious intentions of being effective. The legislature consists of only 49 senators, and it takes 25 votes to pass a bill and 33 to overcome a filibuster. Building positive relationships is crucial for getting things done. In many cases, after all, bills don't fall into a neat left-right ideological framework. It's by no means uncommon for senators from the same political party to wind up disagreeing, especially on complicated legislative proposals. This past legislative session showed that rural senators could split sharply on strongly debated proposals involving housing incentives or telecommunications technology. So the more a freshman senator focuses on building relationships of trust among the full range of colleagues, the greater the lawmaker's chances of building a record of achievement over the course of what can be an 8-year career at the state capitol. In contrast, senators who cling to narrow Congress-style partisanship tend to have little to show after 4 or 8 years, no matter how many long-winded speeches they make or how many barbed social media messages they send out. Candidates running to serve in Lincoln can benefit from understanding this as they contemplate how to serve effectively in the state's legislative body. Here are some other guideposts that don't necessarily receive attention in partisan discussions. Don't dismiss criticism. It can have a great value and can be used productively to improve legislation. The legislative process, when properly conducted, puts bills under rigorous scrutiny. Senators, perhaps including a bill sponsor's regular allies, may voice strong concerns or cite complications that the sponsor or legislative staff hadn't thought of. Senators should be flexible while working with colleagues on appropriate amendments to strengthen legislation. Next, there's no magic money tree at the state capitol. The state has an obligation to fund important services as best it can, but funds aren't unlimited. There are innumerable worthy needs that compete for state dollars, and the Nebraska legislature, unlike Congress, doesn't have the luxury of deficit spending. Plus, the state's current revenue situation is strained. The state's cash reserve is a meager $296 million for the current $8.8 billion 2-year budget. That means lawmakers no longer have a significant fiscal cushion to help them balance the budget. One possibility is that a comprehensive tax revamp next session could generate additional revenue. But in any case, it's imperative that Nebraska lawmakers be prudent in the demands they place on the state budget. And finally, be prepared on occasion to tell supporters no, or it's more complicated than that. State senators, regardless of party affiliation, can serve Nebraska best by exercising independent judgment. Sometimes that means they reach conclusions that don't necessarily square with the demands of their supporters. In such situations, a conscientious lawmaker will tell normally supportive constituents or groups things they don't want to hear, that the best course on a fiercely debated issue is a specific compromise, perhaps, or that the lawmaker has decided the right course is to vote no on a particular proposal, even if some constituents passionately disagree. Bottom line, responsible lawmaking should take precedence over playing to the partisan crowd. Understanding such ingredients for success at the state capitol is a vital part of Nebraska lawmakers' job.
And it's time for living and entertainment. The universe that Stephen Hawking spent a lifetime studying now knows his voice. Following Hawking's death in March, the renowned British physicist who had battled a debilitating degenerative motor neuron disease for decades was remembered at a service Friday at Westminster Abbey. His ashes were buried between Charles Darwin and Isaac Newton, and later covered with a gravestone etched with an equation he used to teach the world about black holes. But at the same time his ashes were lowered into the ground, his voice was beamed from Earth, thousands of light years away toward the nearest known black hole in the universe. It was a symbolic gesture, his loved ones said, that finally let him travel into space. The European Space Agency said the broadcast was beamed over 1A06200, a binary star system that includes a stellar mass black hole about 3,500 light years away from Earth. Family members, friends, fellow scientists, and celebrities gathered Friday afternoon at Hawking's memorial service in London to celebrate his life and the legacy he left behind. We come to celebrate the life and achievements of Stephen Hawking in his holy place, where God has been worshipped for over 1,000 years, and where kings and queens and the great men and women of our national history and international influence are memorialized. We shall bury his mortal remains with those of his fellow scientists, said the Reverend John Hall, Dean of Westminster. We shall give thanks for Stephen Hawking's remarkable gifts and for his life, for his years as professor of mathematics at the University of Cambridge, and for his international reach and influence as a scientist, for his personal courage, endurance, and perseverance living with motor neuron disease, and for his family and friends. We shall, with love, commend his immortal soul to Almighty God.
Okay, here is Ask the Doctor's column by Dr. Robert Ashley. And today's topic is ventricular contractions. Dear Doctor, about 15 years ago, while giving blood, I was advised of an irregularity, which my doctor confirmed after an EKG known as premature ventricular contractions. He told me not to worry, and I've not had any problems. Now I'm 79 and still in good health, but my current doctor had me wear a heart monitor and has now referred me to a cardiologist. Should I be concerned? And Dr. Ashley says, Dear reader, premature ventricular contractions, known as PVCs, are very common in healthy people without any evidence of heart disease, 50 to 54% will be found to have some degree of PVCs when monitored for 24 hours. Here are the basics. Electrical impulses normally begin in the atria of the heart before they make their way down to the ventricles. This leads to the atria attracting first, followed by the ventricles. However, PVCs are ventricular contractions that bypass the atrial beat, leading to an extra heartbeat. PVCs are more common in men than in women, increase in frequency with age, and are more common in African Americans. Lastly, they are more common in people with structural heart disease, especially those with congestive heart failure and those who have had heart attacks. Most PVCs are not felt. It sounds as if you weren't having symptoms from the PVCs, but rather that they were simply noted on examination by your doctor. When patients feel PVCs, they often describe a sensation of a pause or a skipped beat. People also sometimes feel that the heart is beating hard or fast, or that they have a strong pulsation in the neck. Sometimes PVCs can cause lightheadedness and anxiety. Very frequent PVCs have been associated with heart failure. Sometimes concerns about PVCs are related to their frequency, especially if they were sporadic and then become more numerous. Increased frequency of PVCs has been associated with an increase in mortality. This was illustrated in a 2006 study of 15,070 patients, ages 45 to 64, who had no history of heart disease and who had a 2-minute electrocardiogram performed. Those with one or more PVCs on the electrocardiogram had twice the likelihood of dying of coronary heart disease. Similarly, a 2007 study of 45,402 veterans showed that 3.8% of the veterans studied had PVCs on a routine electrocardiogram, and that the PVCs were associated with a nearly twofold increase in mortality. Note that routine electrocardiograms only last for 10 seconds, so detecting a PVC on electrocardiogram suggests a very high frequency over a 24-hour period. Studies over a 24-hour period have also shown that more frequent PVCs recorded in this way are also linked to an increased risk of heart failure and heart-related deaths. But the risk is greater when a PVC is seen on a routine electrocardiogram. The heart monitor that your doctor recommended should pick up the number of PVCs over a 24-hour period. If the PVCs are frequent, the cardiologist may want to do other studies, like an echocardiogram, to determine whether there is any structural damage to the heart. Treatment of PVCs for people with symptoms include calcium channel blockers and beta blockers. If these don't help control symptoms, or if there is structural heart disease, antiarrhythmic medication or electrical destruction of the area of heart that is causing PVCs may be necessary. I would have some degree of concern regarding PVCs, but the results of the 24-hour monitor and your visit to the cardiologist will provide more information.
From Washington, the U.S. government is shutting down a study that was supposed to show if a single drink a day could prevent heart attacks, saying ethical problems with how the research was planned and funded undermine its credibility. The National Institutes of Health used money from the alcohol industry to help pay for a study that ultimately was expected to cost $100 million. It's legal for NIH to use industry money in addition to taxpayer dollars for research as long as certain rules are followed. The problem, an NIH investigation concluded that a small number of its employees had close contact with industry officials that crossed these lines. Some of those interactions appear to be intentionally biased, the study and will bias the study so that it would have a better chance of showing a benefit from moderate alcohol consumption, said NIH Deputy Director Lawrence Tabak. Those employees then kept their interactions with industry officials secret, he said, even after the NIH started the normal process of asking companies or others outside groups to help fund research. Those actions cast doubt that the scientific knowledge gained from the study would be actionable or believable. Another concern, some outside experts who had reviewed the plans raised concerns that it was too small and too short to address the potential problems of a daily drink, such as an increased risk of cancer or heart failure, and not just potential benefits such as a lowered risk of a heart attack. The research was supposed to track 7,800 people who were assigned to take either a drink a day or to totally abstain, or for several years. Only 105 people had enrolled by last month. Oh my goodness, that's the end of the article. Here is another short article for living. Swim Free, Frito the Tiny Seahorse. The 1.5-inch long creature that was found wrapped in a discarded fishing line amid some floating garbage in the Gulf of Mexico was released into the wild Thursday. Frito, a female seahorse, was found by a snorkeler off the beach in Florida. The seahorse had fishing line wrapped around her neck. The snorkeler scooped her into a water bottle and brought her to this Clearwater, Maine marine aquarium, where she was nursed back to health and named after the ubiquitous snack food. Previously rescued seahorses at the aquarium include Cheeto and Funyun.
Where did they get those? Okay, let's see what Amy Dickinson is dealing with today. Dear Amy, a couple of months ago, my girlfriend went out with some mutual friends while I stayed home to deal with a personal issue. It was unusual for her to go out on her own since we do most things together, but we discussed it and I got over my issues I had with the fact that she went out without me. Recently, I found out that she, along with the rest of the group, was drunk that night. The thing is, she doesn't usually get drunk, like 0 times in the last 18 months. We go out with the group quite a bit, and she doesn't have more than 2 drinks. I'm weirded out about this. I understand that it's normal to be independent, and I fully support that. But I just think it's a bit odd to be doing something out of character when the BF isn't present. Signed, Weirded Out. Dear Weirded Out, routinely getting drunk might be a dangerous habit, but your girlfriend is not a big drinker normally, and from your letter, it sounds like no one else has expressed concern about her drinking habits, nor has she done anything embarrassing, unkind, or illegal. This sounds like a case of getting drunk in good company, which, if you're going to do it, is the best way to go. What concerns me more is your attitude. Despite your insistence, you are obviously not okay with the fact that she went out without you and had a good time, and now you're trying to manipulate her into feeling bad after the fact. Barkeep, make mine a double. You and your girlfriend should reframe your codependent relationship. You should consider setting some time aside each week to go out on your own, take a class, or go out with your own friends independently. Your girlfriend should do this too. You each need to develop your own independent, supportive social circle. If you're still fixating on this, then consider visiting a counselor, either on your own or with your girlfriend, to discuss why this is giving you so much anxiety. Okay, next one. Dear Amy, years ago, I began working at an agency where I met a woman who became a good friend. We've served as job references for each other over the years. A few months ago, I faced another job change, and she gave me permission to use her as a reference again. I didn't know at the time that she was having a painful dental issue. But when I found out, I left her a voicemail saying to take care of herself and to forget about writing the reference. Too late. She emailed me the reference she wrote. The next day, she sent me a self-critical missive stating that she blamed herself if her terrible reference cost me the job. She followed this up with a defaming litany of wrongs that I had supposedly done to her over the past 10 years. She confessed that she had never spoken what was really on her mind or had been her true self with me. I was flummoxed. I don't feel any guilt or the need to defend myself because I know that I have not wronged her. I don't think this is really about me or the reference. I am saddened, hurt, and angry, but I don't know how to reply or even if I should reply. On the other hand, I'm a bit worried about her. I need another perspective. Can you help? Flummoxed former friend is signed. Dear Flummoxed, this erratic behavior might have nothing to do with you. Painful dental problems can derail the coolest of customers. Could this possibly be a result of medication she's on? Receiving an email saying she's never been herself around you should make you rethink this relationship. I suggest responding with a simple, "Are you okay?" Otherwise, don't engage her in a conversation about your faults and failings. She owes you an apology, and you should not have to solicit it. Okay, finally, dear Amy, I try to read your column every day. Wow, you hit the nail so squarely on the head with your advice to concerned mom whose daughter drank an entire bottle of wine and then drove home. Thank you. Your words were profound. I needed them today. Signed, A. Dear A, people who send me questions are generally airing their personal dilemmas for everyone's benefit. I hope that you will act on the nugget of my answer that spoke to you today.
From cannabis to quinoa, ruby to low sugar, this is not your grandmother's chocolate. With the market for traditional candy bars in developed countries flagging as consumers shun sugary items for healthier treats, food companies are trying to make chocolate more appealing. Their tactics include gimmicks like Ritter Sports hemp-infused chocolate and grass bars. They don't get you high. New flavors and colors, as well as formulas that cut down on sugar. Some chocolatiers are even diversifying away from candy. Hershey Company, which began selling its classic bar 120 years ago, is moving into popcorn and potato chips, while Mars in November said it will buy a stake in a health snack firm, Kind. Just 2 months later, Nestle agreed to sell its U.S. confectionery unit amid falling revenue and a focus on products like coffee and water. Sugar is portrayed as the new tobacco, said Eric Bergman, a commodities broker at Jenkins Sugar Group. Consumers are now shifting away from the iconic sugar-filled chocolate brands that we know and into healthier foods. The largest chocolate companies have followed suit, and they are transitioning from chocolate companies to snack companies. While lower cocoa prices helped improve demand more recently, there's a growing push to discourage consumption of sugar, which makes up almost half of an average chocolate bar. To counter health concerns, Nestle is selling slimmed-down milky bars in the UK and Ireland as part of a program to use 30% less sugar. Hershey's almost $1 billion purchase of Amplify snack brands, which also sells protein bars, shows how the industry is branching out as it contends with falling demand for sugary products. The moves come as Euromonitor International sees 2018 chocolate sales growth in Western Europe and North America below levels of several years ago. There are some bright spots for chocolate consumptions. Sales of premium brands are on the rise. Demand in developing countries is growing, and consumers are increasingly willing to pay more for dark chocolate, which contains more cocoa and less sugar. Millennials are also keen to try new varieties, prompting more flavors and artisan brands. Ruby chocolate is one example. Nestle has been quick to adopt the first new color in 8 decades, which was introduced by #1 cocoa processor Barry Callebaut last year, and is shaded pink using only natural ingredients. Consumers also want to understand how the cocoa in their products was produced and if it meets ethical standards. Some customers even want more say over what they buy, according to Andreas Ronken, Chief Executive Officer of Ritter Sport, which lets consumers vote on future limited editions. Consumers are increasingly asking themselves, where does my food come from? Wyatt Elder, Director of Research and Development at Cargill Cocoa and Chocolate, and Ilko Kwast, Marketing Director at the company, said by email. There is a change going on in the marketplace, not just among millennials, but across age groups and geographies, which will impact on us and other manufacturers. Standing still is not an option.
I've been doing my best to keep the chocolate industry in business, you know. Apparently there's something wrong with it. Nebraska women run through state for multiple sclerosis awareness. Only a few raindrops fell as AC/DC's Thunderstruck reverberated across the street where Tammy Kruzjak was coming up on the finish line. Kruzjak had been running for 6 days for the cross-country relay MS Run the US, a 3,100-mile marathon dedicated to raising awareness of multiple sclerosis. The relay involves 18 runners and begins in Los Angeles and ends in New York City. I run because I have a dear friend who was diagnosed with MS in 1987, and we had been friends since 1995, Kruzjak said. Now she's in a wheelchair. The Omaha native also participated in the relay in 2016, and this year she completed 157.6 miles during her segment from Holdridge to Lincoln. She started on June 12th and crossed her finish line at Bryan West Campus on Sunday afternoon. Wow. Each runner has to commit to raising $10,000 for the relay organization, which conducts multiple sclerosis research, helps victims, and spreads awareness, according to the organization's website. Donations are made before the race and along the way. Lincoln native Christina Myint, it's M-Y-I-N-T, was waiting for Kruzjak to hand off the bright orange relay baton to carry it another 195 miles to Des Moines, Iowa. She will leave on Monday and plans to complete her run in 7 days, she said. Every runner is a little different running the race, Myint said. I'm going to break up my segment into 10 miles at a time, but I might have to split it up differently depending on when I need nutrition or the weather. Myint started fundraising for multiple sclerosis 5 years ago. She has always been an endurance athlete and wanted to do more for those she knew with the disease. To complete her required $10,000 fundraiser, Myint is offering a raffle throughout her run. People can buy tickets for $10 for smaller prize drawings, and if they donate $100, all of their tickets will be put in for the drawing of a football signed by Nebraska football coach Scott Frost and Larry the Cable Guy. Mint expects the temperature to waver between 90 and 100 degrees during her run, but she is hoping to have higher temperatures rather than higher humidity. Both Krishak and Mint agreed that day 3, usually the hardest, mentally and physically. The relay started in April and will continue until August. People think, gosh, you're going to run 195 miles? Mint said, but there will be pain, blisters, soreness in those days, but it will eventually go away. It pales in comparison to what people with MS go through, who suffer their whole life.
Freshmen everywhere. Oh, I'm sorry. We're supposed to tell you that WellCare of Nebraska is proud to bring you today's reading of the Omaha World Herald and Lincoln Journal-Star. For more WellCare, call today at 1-888-255-2605 or visit www.wellcare.com/Nebraska. Now I will get to sports. Freshmen everywhere. It's time for the World Herald's deep dive into Nebraska's football roster. In other words, the camp countdown, which covers about 60 Huskers who the beat writers think will make some of the most significant contributions in the program this season. But this list comes with a catch. It was conceived and submitted just before the NCAA passed a rule letting football players compete in up to 4 games in a season while still retaining their red shirts. That mostly affects true freshmen, and the Huskers have plenty who will be champing at the bit to get action in 3 or 4 games. Our 2018 list, 11 honorable mentions and a top 50, was already littered with 15 freshmen and 7 other newcomers, including each of Nebraska's junior college signees and the Utah graduate transfer defense tackle, Vaha Vanku. That's on top of so many sophomores who made the list. In short, this is one of youngest, newest rosters Nebraska has had in years. New coach Scott Frost overhauled this thing in near record time, while NU will take a few lumps with the Big Ten's hardest schedule. It will pay off in 2019 when most of these players have valuable experience and the schedule softens. The top 10 is weeks away, but you can guess on a few no-brainers. Stanley Morgan is in there. Ditto for an oft-criticized member of Nebraska's secondary. The countdown is a balance of the player's previous performance, the overall value of the position, and the value of the position to Nebraska's team this year. In case in point, a left tackle in a pro-style offense guarding a stationary quarterback is more important than he would be in a spread offense where the ball is getting out of the quarterback's hand fast. Conversely, in an aggressive defense like Eric Schindemar intends to run, the onus is on the secondary. Currently, a weakness of Nebraska's to cover well. One thing to watch, there aren't a ton of current or former walk-ons on this list. That's partly a function of the team's relative youth in scholarship players. But it's also those 7 newcomers, all on scholarship, who figure to play considerable roles. Whereas the previous coaching staff, hamstrung to some degree from using JUCO guys to fill in the roster, had to plug with walk-ons. Frost's staff went JUCO. We will see which walk-ons surge their way into the two deep or contribute with strong special teams play.
Okay, here's an article about the College World Series here in Omaha, and it's headlined 8-Run Inning Lifts Arkansas over Texas. Once Arkansas's offense got rolling against Texas in the 6th inning, nothing could stop the Razorbacks, not even the weather. 5 straight batters had reached base when the teams were pulled from the field for a weather delay. When play resumed 2 hours and 49 minutes later, 5 more in a row got on base. What turned into an 8-run 6th carried the Razorbacks to an 11-5 win in their College World Series opener on Sunday. We have such a balanced lineup, and we all know what we're trying to do at the plate, Arkansas's Luke Bonfield said. Once Casey Martin had that leadoff hit after the rain delay, everything snowballed, and we got a ton more momentum, and we never let up on the gas. The Razorbacks, they're 45-19 with their season, scored double-digit runs for the 4th time in 6 NCAA tournament wins, and had their highest total in 28 College World Series games. The Longhorns, they're 42-22 over the year in the College World Series for a record 36th time, lost their 3rd straight Omaha opener since 2011. Bonfield delivered the first home run of the College World Series with his 2-run shot to left for a 3-2 lead in the 5th. Parker Joe Robinson took over for Texas starter Nolan Kingman to start the 6th and walked the only 2 batters he faced. That started a parade of pitchers who either struggled to find the strike zone or got dinged for single after single. Texas hadn't given up so many runs in an inning this season. I'm not shell-shocked, Longhorns coach David Pierce said. It's just part of it. It's not the way we wished it had gone. Unfortunately, it got away from us, and we couldn't overcome the deficit. In all, Arkansas sent 14 batters to the plate, and Texas used 5 pitchers in an inning that matched Arkansas's biggest of the season. For the game, 8 Arkansas batters had at least 1 hit and 7 drove in a run.
It's the middle of June and summer workouts have already begun. But Creighton's 2018-19 roster still may not be set. The Jays will host 4-star recruit A.J. Lawson for an official visit beginning Monday, a late recruiting target with the potential to immediately help CU replace the veteran scorers it lost from last year's squad. Lawson, who most recently played for GTA Prep in Ontario, Canada, had originally been labeled as a 2019 recruit, but he's reclassifying, meaning he'd be granted immediate eligibility to play for a Division I team this winter. He already took a visit to South Carolina. He's planning to check out Oregon, SMU, and Tulane, according to zagsblog.com. But at least for the first 3 days this week, Creighton will get to make its pitch to Lawson. It's not difficult to see why the Jays are interested. They've lost their top 4 veteran contributors from a season ago. Whether they can replicate the production of wings Marcus Foster and Kyrie Thomas, who combined for a 43.9 points per game, is arguably the biggest question facing a CU team looking for a 3rd straight NCAA tournament berth. Creighton did add a graduate transfer, Rice's Connor Cashaw, who averaged 15.5 points per game last year, is expected to join the program in August. Southeast Missouri transfer Denzel Mahoney is already practicing, but can't play until the 2019-20 campaign. So CU is still looking for a player to fill its last remaining scholarship spot. Perhaps Lawson is not that guy. He just completed an impressive showing while playing for Canada's national team at the FIBA America's Under-18 tournament this past week. Lawson, who's listed as a 6'6" guard, ranked 10th among all players at the event by averaging 14.7 points over 6 games. He shot 41.4% and grabbed 5.2 rebounds per contest. He led Canada with 18 points, 12 rebounds, and 2 steals in Saturday's championship game loss to the USA basketball U18 team, which is loaded with 5-star prospects from the 2018 and 2019 recruiting classes. Before Lawson reclassified, he was ranked as the number 40 overall recruit on the 247 sports rankings. Even Daniels, 247 sports recruiting analyst, reporting in February that Lawson has registered a 36-inch vertical jump and a 6'10" wingspan. Rivals has him listed as 4-star prospect. Creighton was on hand to see him play in person in January. The Jays offered him last year. The updated ranking for CU's current 2018 recruiting class is number 40 on the 247 sports composite. Freshman Marcus Zagowski, Christian Bishop, and Sam Froling have been on campus since the first weekend of June.
In case you're a World Cup fan, Mexico tops defending champ Germany. Defending World Cup champions have been finding it hard to get out of the group stage lately, and Germany is proving no exception. The 2014 champions, ranked number 1 in the world, were exposed defensively and surprisingly beaten by Mexico 1-0 on Sunday, putting its hopes of advancement in doubt. Well, not everyone is in doubt. We will make it, Germany coach Joachim Low said. There is no reason to fall apart because you lose one game. Herving Lozano scored the lone goal in the 35th minute, picking up Javier Hernandez's pass inside the penalty area and beating Mesut Ozil before shooting past Germany goalkeeper Manuel Neuer from 10 yards. I'm going to another page. There's more to this story. The goal decided the match, a match Germany didn't expect to lose. I don't know if it's the biggest victory in Mexico's history, but one of the biggest for sure, Lozano said. My teammates and I did some great work. We all ran our hearts out. This is the result of all that hard work. 3 of the previous 4 defending World Cup champions failed to reach the knockout stages, France, Italy, and Spain. 2 of them lost their opening matches while the Italians had to settle for a draw. The Germans are bidding to become the first team to retain the World Cup title since Brazil in 1962, but have now won only 1 of their last 7 games in all competitions. They hadn't lost an opening game since the then West Germany fell 2-1 to Algeria in 1982. Mexico had never beaten Germany in a competitive match, but was transformed from the team which lost to the Germans 4-1 in last year's Confederations Cup, conceding twice in the opening 8 minutes.
Despite setting records last fall, Iowa tight end Noah Fant went largely unnoticed outside of the Big Ten West. That should not be the case in 2018. Fant will return for his junior season as one of the nation's most intriguing pro prospects at his position. The 6'5", 241-pound Fant has size, speed, athleticism, and a knack for finding the end zone. He caught 30 passes last season, 11 for touchdowns. That was a school record for tight ends. And his 16.5 yards per catch led the nation for his position. The Hawkeyes are expecting even bigger numbers this fall, despite the fact that defenses will be more focused on shutting him down. He's a great athlete and he pushes himself, quarterback Nate Stanley said. He works hard. There are a lot of things that he's tried to improve on. It was obvious that Fant had a chance to be special as a prep star for Omaha South, where he was a first-team All-Nebraska defensive end, while also running track and playing basketball. Iowa used him as a true freshman, which it rarely does at any spot on the line, and by his sophomore year, he had earned a starting job. His first game in 2017 was a sign of things to come, as he caught 2 passes, both for touchdowns. My goals are to help my team as much as possible. Last year, that involved me catching passes and scoring some touchdowns and stuff like that. This year, if it involves me blocking more or whatever our offensive needs me to do, then that's my goal too. Following this year's NFL draft, numerous publications posting mock drafts for 2019 had Fant listed as a possible first-round selection. Though Fant said he did not pay much attention to such speculation. And I see it's 12 o'clock, time for us to say, have a wonderful week.
And join us again next week.
Thank you very much, Mike Garrity and Laura Beth Barr, for doing another wonderful
What does your
job
hat
for
say?
us.
P? What?
You were
Well,
tuned
it's
to
just-
the radio.
Oh,
Talking
it's a
Book
Nike
Network
thing.
in
Nike.
Omaha,
But what's
Nebraska.
the
We've been proudly serving our
DR or whatever that is on the
for
side?
43 years. Radio Talking Book is brought to you with the cooperation of KIO.
Not even you know what.
And statewide through facilities of NET Radio and television.
It says established in 1927.
So
So
DR, maybe,
And now
Dear
please stay tuned for the
DN?
department store ask with
Maybe
the
it's,
vivacious Nancy Dirks.
where did you
coming up
buy it?
next.
Or where did you
Radio
get it?
Talking Book.
I don't know.
DN?
I don't know. You ask too many questions. I don't know those answers.
Like a little kid.
Okay,
I'll let you take this.
to lunch with my friend. Oh, I'll call her up and see how she's feeling today. Oh, my friends are getting sick.
No,
Dying. Stuff like that.
that's not good.
Not good.
So I couldn't get in the front door. I wonder if I'll be able to get in the front door or out the front door. They're gonna lock us in here.
Okay.
That's what they're gonna do. Yikes.
You're help,
This is
help.
getting serious now.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Nice to have a strong man. around.
Yeah, right.
For my second article, it'll be something from